Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Don't want you to stress out. Don't worry about anything because quite simply, everything's perfect. Really is. We're going to help you realize that. We're counting down the top 10 ways to realize that. And we're going to get back into it with somebody who's a master alchemist. She's a certified clinical hypnotherapist and trainer, and she's amazing. We love her. Everybody loves her. She's back with us, Debbie Unterman, on the program. Hi, Debbie. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, and I love you too.
You're fantastic for making us realize within ourselves what's actually going on up here and all within here. And I do want to remind people that we call this walking between the raindrops. And that's really the title of the podcast. I want you to explain what that means because everybody has a different view of what that is. If we're outside, we walk between the raindrops. If you can get in between them, I'm assuming you don't get wet, right?
Getting in between them is not like having a downpour and finding this spot. That's what I say would be the umbrella. That's what the umbrella does, which is like an amazing invention, I think, because it does give you a spot where you can be in a downpour and not get wet. But better than that is what I call being umbrellaed by your own inner guides and have them, I'm going to call it, love you so much that they keep you dry, that they just create this timing that it can be pouring and you can think, I've got to get out. Do I have to put a raincoat on and everything? And maybe you do, but somehow you go out and the rain has stopped.
Even though it's still raining, meaning there could be craziness around you in your life, in your world and everything like that, but you're not affected by it because you're walking between the raindrops and you have that protection. But first we have to get there.
And when you see it happen over and over, you go, this just isn't a coincidence.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And it's a great feeling, even just to use the analogy, when you, let's say you run to your car, you walk to your car, whatever, and it is raining, but then you realize I'm not really getting that wet. I'll think about that. It happened actually yesterday, big storm around here.
Oh, good.
Kind of tapered off, and I'm looking out there, and I see in the puddles, the rain's coming down. I'm like, all right, here we go. Got to go to the car. And I'm like, I didn't really get that wet. And I really think that I was in between the drops. Seriously, in between.
Great.
But sometimes there's a massive downpour, and then you really need that protection. And for that, there's Debbie. And that's why we're here today, to show you that everything's perfect. And we've been talking about the 10 steps to realizing it. We have this lofty goal of getting to all 10 steps, but that was like 4 shows. Never did.
I've lost track by now, but we're having fun getting there and enjoy the journey, right?
It's all about the journey. Plus, we go into some deeper detail about all of the steps. And I do believe we left off, Debbie, at number 8.
I don't think that we have hit number 8, except maybe peripherally. I may have mentioned that we do want to get to the point of accepting ourselves with all of our foibles, faults, flaws, blemishes. This is something that, I've talked about. I have to accept myself with my scars from acne, which I can put makeup on and make a little more acceptable to get on a screen. But when I'm
gonna stop you right there. I don't even see that. I honestly
it's a good illusion. It is a good illusion.
And I'm going to show you this. I have minor skin cancer being treated. I'm working on that, some piece up there. It's all part of, we're all going through stuff. We all, whatever it might be. Why is it so hard, Debbie, to accept ourselves? Why do we look in the mirror?
Because we see the flaws, right? Like I'm looking and I'm seeing my hair thinning, right? No one else is. They're looking in my eyes where I want them to look. But we see ourselves and we see the little minuscule things, like there can be everything right and we see the one thing that's wrong. Now, there is brain research possibly behind that, and that would be called the negativity bias. I don't know if they literally talk about that as being how we see ourselves, but it is how we see the world, how we hear the the judgments, the criticisms that have come to us. Like, okay, you have been on the air for years and years, and there are probably some reviews, right? People are on Broadway and they get reviews. Some people, like Whoopi Goldberg on The View, says she stopped reading them, and she encourages everyone to stop reading them because the negativity bias in our brain, and this is evolutionary, I'll tell you why, wants to just pick on the one bad review or comment or criticism or backhanded compliment, which is really an insult. People like to give them sometimes. And we recognize them and feel them like a punch in the gut. And for some reason, they stick with us. People might have said, you know, if we go back to reviews, you might have had 100 good reviews, but the one thing, well, let's talk about the Carpenters. What was her name? The girl, Karen Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
She was a drummer, a singer. I mean, a voice like an angel. She worked with her brother, and they did some of the most beautiful songs. But one review talked about her being heavy, plump. I'm not sure what the word was. She grabbed onto that and would not let go. To her detriment, it killed her. She became anorexic because of a review and she was just maybe a teenager. And someone has the gall to put in there that she's whatever their perception of her as plump or something, or whatever in the 60s that they thought of her. That was the time of Twiggy.
Early 70s.
Early 70s.
Biggest hit was
okay.
Like, but
you're a DJ, of course, Yeah, but remember Twiggy?
I do.
Blonde. Like, she was like that big around. And do you know why the fashion industry wanted a skinny model? Because if you go back to like the 40s, having a curve, right? You can imagine all the sailors, whistling about women with a figure that has a little weight to it, maybe a skinny waist, but it's got, hips and breasts and all that. Mm-hmm. So they figure if we put our clothes on a beautiful model who's, zoftig, who's got a little weight, then they'll be looking at the woman. They won't be looking at the clothes. So we're going to get a skinny model who'll be so ugly. She'll be so skinny. People will be looking at our designs. And that's what started it. But what happens instead? Models start having to have like 1% body fat, which is almost impossible for women. Only, I think, 2% of the population have 1% body fat. And people start thinking that that's what they're supposed to look like. And there goes Karen Carpenter.
It's so sad. And when you think of those reviews, those thoughts, they are thoughts from somebody else, but sometimes we can't. If I see anything even connected, and over the years, there's been things that have popped up, but I know what I am, and that's their perception, and you got it wrong. I'm just going to say that. But I will say this too, talking about the blemishes and things on your face. I was at the gym a couple of days ago, and I do the same thing you do. I'm like, man, look at this, look at that. I got bullied as a kid and all of that. But then I looked in the mirror while I was working out, and I looked at the total sum. And I'm like, you know what? When you look at all of that, those little things that you're looking at are even that much smaller. You don't really focus on them when you realize who you are and what you got to offer, be it your entire body, your entire, everything that you have to offer. That was just we're talking about it now, but that was the thought that came. And I'm the most humble person on the planet. I really am. But it was like, that's what struck me when I looked. I'm like, you know what? I'm looking at this one thing over here. Why? When you can focus
good job.
on that.
Yeah, that's good for you that you can be emotionally healthy enough to do that.
It's not easy.
But you know what? Okay, let's talk about childhood. Maybe you had some of these, things that happened when you were young that you still remember. So I had like a boyfriend that broke up with me in 6th grade, And the little note, you know how it was all you pass notes or something, was because I was flat and uninteresting. I still remember those words.
Yep. Yep.
Do you have anything like that that you can remember that someone said to you? Whereas I'm not going to remember all the good things that people said to me when I was a kid.
I was the fat kid. I was the kid walking on the playground that nobody played with. I was the one that didn't,
Ooh.
and it's cliche. I get picked for dodgeball. And I will tell you right now, even though what I just said, you look at your whole self and not focus on these things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fat. I'm not kidding. Like not obese, but I gained 15 pounds and it's in the last year, busy, lots going on, and it's on my radar. So it's like I don't have time to deal with it right now, but that's what marinates because of that situation
Right.
when I was 7, 8,
Right.
9, 10, all up to I only
That's why.
11th grade is where I lost the weight.
Okay. And so you see yourself now
Yeah.
as fat, a word that I sometimes use just because it's easy to use, and I
Yes.
don't mean it as an
Chunky.
insult, but
Yeah.
other people do use it.
Yeah.
Um, but I bet just like my face, people would never say, "Hey, Steve, you're getting fat." They wouldn't even see it. They'd see the
Absolutely
guy
not.
that works out and everything else about you, that whole picture, like you're saying.
If I
But
lose
let me
15 pounds, 20 pounds, people will say, "Are you okay? You look sick." And in my mind, I'm like, "Yeah, rocking it."
Yeah. And there is something called body dysmorphia. And
Hmm.
that's what happens with people with dyslexia. They literally see well, with anorexia. They
Yep.
can with dyslexia. With anorexia, got the wrong
Yep.
word there. There's also bulimia, is what I was thinking of. But they can see themselves in the mirror. They are skeletons and they see it as fat. Now, that's body dysmorphic disorder, BDD, and very few of the population, only maybe it's somewhere less than 10%, actually has that. And that's an illness. That's something you really need special help. And those people often do die. You've seen those anorexic people that have to be carried. They
Yes.
they get sicker and sicker. Um, but let me go into the evolutionary reason for the fact that we have this prejudice towards this negativity bias. It was to keep cavemen alive. It really serves an evolutionary purpose.
Hmm.
So, modern brain science, neuroscience is finding these things. And if we have the the women, the hunters gatherers, the women are picking the berries, the men are going out hunting, and a woman, while she's picking berries, eats one, drops dead right there on the ground. People start seeing that she's dead now, and they go, "Don't eat those berries." Now, that is more important to not eat the poisonous berries than to find the most delicious ones that you can find and go, "Oh, let's find more of these delicious
Uh,
ones." The brain, for the survival of the species, the brain has got to hold on not to the deliciousness, but to that you can die.
so it's a byproduct of that essentially is focus on the best description, the negative.
That's why we have a negativity bias instead of all the things. Like, okay, I'll tell you one good thing I do remember from childhood. People used to say to me too, in my autograph books, if you remember, back at camp and, grade school, my age, they still did autograph books. People would, I guess yearbooks, but you're already older by then. But as a kid, people would always say to me, "Keep your smile," or "Keep smiling." And I literally believed, oh, that's just like saying "sincerely yours." It's just what you say to people. Like everyone says that to everyone. And it took till I grew up and kept noticing that I smile more than other people.
Heck yeah.
That I realized they meant it. I really do. But I remembered the flat and uninteresting a lot quicker than
Wow.
I remembered that I had a smile that would, be something that people would literally write back to me about. that didn't flash in my mind as much. It took me years to figure that out.
Isn't that a shame? And the first thing I see is your eyes and your smile. Of course, you see the other things that frame that, but it's not, again, I don't see what you see, the negative things. And I think that's true of everybody. I had the same exact conversation with somebody last night, and they were focusing on different things. And I'm like, please stop. I don't see it. I don't know what you're talking about. You don't even need to put makeup on. Like, what? Don't even give it a thought. And I said, I'm being genuine. Trust me. I'm not just saying this to make you feel better. I truly mean it. I don't see, I can't think of one negative thing about you. Can't.
And yet, there's where we have to go beyond the beliefs.
Mm.
Because no matter what you try to say to her, she will have the belief. Like, you'll have the belief
Yeah.
that you're fat. She'll have the belief there's something wrong with her. And that's when the work that I do has to go back to where did that belief first root inside of them? Where did that take root? So, mine could have been the boyfriend, in sixth grade that said that to me. So I might have to go back, be that little sixth grader on the playground where I find out that's what he said, and rescue my little girl from that and say, he's just some punk. What
Yep.
he says has nothing to do with you. Don't believe it. He's wrong. You're very interesting. And then my inner child has to buy it. She has to buy into it. And maybe she gets a chance in this session to talk to Wayne Bogosian and tell him, who are you? There's nothing so special about you that women are running to you and wanting to be your girlfriend. And it's your loss if you want to break up with me. As that child, to give her the agency in the session, in the subconscious mind, where it happened. So no matter how much you say to this woman, but you're fine. We have to find out where she first learned that, and then go right back. When we say open that file, we have to go right back to when she was that age, who said it. It could have been a father saying it all the time, and maybe they didn't say it exactly. Maybe it's what daddy is saying about other people on the street.
Yep.
Maybe he said, look at that fatty, she should be ashamed of herself, she shouldn't even be in public, something like that. And that goes in.
So I want to clarify for everybody that we are talking about hypnotherapy at that moment. I don't think we said that, where you go back and confront that child. And questions here. You said that and I've done this before we met, I went back to my childhood. I knew that a lot of my issues stem from that, and parents, for sure. Um, and I confronted myself, my younger self, call it 5, 7 years old, whatever. But you just said you have to buy it as a child. As you confront yourself, you console yourself, you're there for yourself. Your adult self is there for your younger self as you almost see them. You're looking at yourself in that hypnotherapy session.
Yes.
But how do you make your younger self buy it, believe it? How is that done?
Sometimes takes some time.
Okay.
But for one thing, I use a tool. I use stuffed animals. And so I literally will find out if the person really believes their child is there and now become the child. I'll just say little Steve right now. Does little Steve want to say anything back to you? What does he want to say? And we develop a conversation. And when you see him, on the playground, having been bullied by these kids, I will say in that moment while they're feeling the emotions, and big Steve, what does it make you want to do when you see that little boy? And what I'm hoping they're going to say is, I want to pick him up. I want to hold his hand. I want to tell him not to believe them. And at that moment, because it's kind of choreography, I call it, that's when because I have them pick out a stuffed animal, a teddy bear or a lion or a tiger or a mouse or, a snake or a dolphin, or I have all sorts of different ones. So a monkey, they pick out the one that they think would represent their child. I have it in my hand. And at the moment when they're with their child and I have them say, I want to give them a hug, I'll say, they're still lying there with their eyes closed. Good. Can you take this monkey right now? Can you hold it? Imagine that this is little Steve. And can you give him a hug? And now become little Steve. How does he like that? Does he feel you? Does he believe you when you tell him that it's okay? What does he want to say back? And we develop the whole rapport and a whole dialogue. And that's why my sessions can be up to 2 hours.
It's interesting. It's almost like you have a 2 hour split personality because you're
Well,
talking. Yeah.
many splits. I work with those different parts of us because we also have that judge, that bully, now intercepted into our own subconscious mind. It has become us. And now we're the bully that was telling us at the schoolyard, you're fat, you're not going to get picked for the team. We now hear that in our head, we have an inner bully. So we also have to find that part. So I split people. I call it divide and conquer.
Mm. I
Because
got to
we
tell you
have to
something.
know we're not just one person. I call that singular personality disorder.
So it's good to be multiple personalities when they're in check. Um, you have an interesting way of bringing things out because, well, first of all, I'm going to say that many sessions, not many, but multiple sessions are typically needed. And I'm saying that after having like one or two, not with you because it was before we met, but I just remembered as we're talking that there was one kid that stood up for me. And I guess I might have been, I don't know, maybe like fifth, fourth grade, somewhere, third, fourth grade. His name was Ralph Competente. And he stood up for me. And I remember maybe a year later, I'm in the car with my mother going up a hill right near my house, and there was a car accident. And there was a couple of kids who called skitching. They would grab the back of a truck on a skateboard and ride there. And I later found out shortly thereafter that he was killed. And it was like
Oh,
he was the kid that stood up, and I never forgot him. Yeah,
wow.
you forget that stuff.
Well,
And I'm not even in therapy or session.
maybe you are.
Do that. But yeah, that just came back. And I can
Yeah.
vividly, I don't want to get into gross detail, but I remember looking at that accident and it was pretty
Oh,
graphic. Not knowing at that moment, but
wow.
later finding out it was Ralph and another kid that lost their lives in that. But I never forgot him because he was the one that, and I could even, this is how freaky this stuff is. When your head, your mind, subconscious is massaged, I can tell you where on that playground, I can draw a map right now, and I can tell you where in that school, sixth grade, elementary school playground,
Exactly.
where I was, where he stood up, right near a fence, right next to this certain playground, equipment.
Yes.
It's pretty wild. It's all up here until you pull it out. And
That's where we go back right to that incident. That's the first thing.
yeah,
And the thing is, I don't know the incidents. I don't know. People don't tell me that. That's where the subconscious mind brings us. All I'll say is go back to the first time that you believed you were fat or that someone called you fat. I don't know what it's going to be. And sometimes it may not be what you think it is. I might really believe, okay, I got it. They told me all about their life. I know where we're going to go. And the subconscious brings up something that
yeah,
they may never have thought of before,
yeah.
but it's
To me,
programmed. It's in there. And that's why we got to grab it by the roots. Until we get to the root, it's going to stay in there.
yeah,
But
it's
that guy, Ralph, is that what you said his name is?
Ralph Competenti. Yeah.
Okay. So the way that I do this work, talk about multiple personalities. Well, we bring in a cast of characters. Some of them are in you, like my book is called Talking to Myself, Learning to Love, the voices in your head. So some of them are that inner critic of that's us. But sometimes, it is a kid on the playground, and I'll say, who is it that's saying that to you? And you might say, you want to give me a name? I could make one up. Let's say it's Kenny. So if I ask little Steve, tell Kenny what that feels like, he'd be like deer in headlights. He'd be too scared. But I'd say, who wants to tell Kenny? And then Ralph might come into your session.
Hmm.
You'll go, well, I remember that Ralph used to stand up for me. And I'd say, okay, let's have Ralph tell him. And Ralph will be like, hey, pick on someone your own size, or leave the kid alone, or there's nothing wrong with him, or, look at you. So now we have Kenny and Ralph and little Steve and big Steve all in the session, and everybody's talking. And even though, and I'm sure that was a horrible experience, the last time you saw Ralph, he was mushed, gross, and that's still in your head. But I can have you talk to Ralph now, and it won't be that corpse. It will be his spirit.
Sure.
We call that etheric plane communication. And then you could even have your inner Ralph if you need him. And he could become maybe a play friend, a protector for little Steve. Or maybe we'll get a big Steve protector to be his protector. But that's why this work is so much fun. It's like a play in your own mind.
It's like watching your own TV show, but a show that shaped you. And think about all the shows that shaped us over the years, even the ones that were fun, like Friends. How many people quote from a TV show, the things that, Monica used to say, or, everybody on the show. It's a cast of characters in our subconscious. We have a cast of characters and we're part of it.
Yes.
And
yes.
And Kenny, I don't like him. I've never had luck with people named Kenny in my life. We don't even want to go there.
That's funny. Sometimes I'll pick up a word or a story or something, and it turns out it was the perfect story. I remember once telling someone this story of Horton Hears a Who, and that everyone's important no matter how small. And it just so happens my client goes, I just saw that or read that book. It was like perfect. And I don't know where I'm picking that up from, why I'm using that, but something is speaking to me too. Mm-hmm. And I have to trust it, which was number 7. Trust yourself. Trust the things that come out of your mind. Don't ever think, ooh, that would be stupid to say. Because it's coming from somewhere and there's some reason you're saying it and it's important to that person. So now number 8 was accept yourself. And in order to do that, sometimes we have to get that dross out of the way, that stuff that's been in the way, causing these false beliefs that people think they can just say, I don't believe that anymore. I mean, that's what I was saying. I hear guys, millionaires all the time, making millions of dollars and getting people to buy into their programs to just change their beliefs. Just stop believing that you can't make money. And then they have all these social proof, these people that stand on stage and say, see, now I'm making $50,000 after working with him. Well, how many people aren't? The ones that are didn't have anything to block them from doing it.
Right.
But there are some people that I'm afraid that actually it judges them because they've been told by this guru, that's what they call them online, gurus, that you should just be able to change your belief. And when it doesn't work for them, now it's going to put them deeper into there's something wrong with me.
Well, the concept of changing your belief is true, but it's how you change your belief. And through hypnotherapy, I think that's the way to do it. Tell everybody that. We're just about out of time. No, we're really out of time.
Well, we got to number 8.
We did. We attained goal today. We've attained
only 2 left.
Yes. And the bottom line is everything's perfect. And those are, 8 of the steps so far to realizing it. So if somebody wants to work with you as a master alchemist and really change their life, change their beliefs, maybe go back to their childhood if that's what's blocking or driving them. How does it all start with you, Debbie?
Almost always we're going to go back to childhood in one of the first sessions. Even people that say they've done inner child work, I've never found that they have actually done what was needed with that inner child. So almost every time the first session will be something from childhood, and then we can go way beyond that. But it doesn't take a lot of sessions. Like, you were saying you did 1 or 2. I have some clients that I've only done 1 or 2 with, and they're on their way and everything is good now.
I totally listen. I'm right there. I'm right there with you. But the more we talk about it now, even though I've only had a session, I believe more can be done to make it even more beneficial. So
Yes.
maybe if you
And
want,
I call it alchemizing your life.
okay.
You keep getting more in touch with guides. You keep asking, how do you get in touch with guides? Well, first you have to find your inner child and heal that child to find a guide. You can't, otherwise we call it a spiritual bypass. Oh, I'm just going to get up there and, get all woo-woo and start channeling the fourth planet from the third sun or something. You got to do your inner work first, and then there's more you can do. So in order to get in touch with me, you can call me at 770-434-7488. You can go onto my website, Go Beyond Beliefs. We'll get you there. You can read some chapters from my book. You could buy my book, and it's a self-help book, and you can see how far you can get all on your own.
Awesome. GoBeyondBeliefs.com. Maybe next time we can talk about George Mashkow, who used to beat the snot out of me and my friend Mike in 7th and 8th grade.
It was George. Okay.
There's a Kenny there, but George was just
a little older. Yeah, that's 7th and 8th.
But at least I had my buddy Mike, so we used to rumble, but it was all good. Always a pleasure talking with you. It really is.
You too. I look forward to it again.
Yep. Same here. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.